One of the primary purposes of mediation is to de-escalate conflict and asking effective question is very important in mediation, because one of the role of the mediator is to facilitate mediation process by actively listening. And for a mediator to actively listening to both parties in conflict, he or she must ask the right questions in order to understand the parties. So the goal for mediators in using open-ended questions is simply to listen actively. Remember, the wrong approach can lead to party giving up in mediation process. Asking questions in mediation is a vital skill that clarifies issues, uncover interest, build understanding, and guide parties towards resolution. The kind of questions you ask in mediation: can my mediation process, or can make mediation process positively or negatively? Because asking questions involves open communications and sharing of ideas, and your tone as a mediator and your body language need to be matched to show sincerity. In asking questions in mediation process, there are different approaches to that. One of them is asking close-ended question, and it's not good for mediation. The answer you get when using a close-ended question is yes or no answer, and that will limit parties from speaking up more. For example, maybe a friend of mine comes to visit and I say, tea or coffee? He or she will just reply, either tea or coffee. But when you ask the word, what would you like to have? You open the room for the person to explain further what he or she wants. He or she could go beyond asking just for tea or coffee. They could ask for more of other things. So that's what questioning does in mediation. Because when you just say tea or coffee, there is no room for more communication. But we want to talk about open-ended questions. For example, open-ended questions encourage more of dialogue and explorations in mediation. For example, if you're in mediation with both parties in conflict and you ask, can you tell me more about how that situation made you feel? This kind of question, you understand that party tends to speak more, because this kind of question open room for more communication, for party to speak up. Open-ended questions get people talking. They help to engage people and empower them to speak up. Because to actively listen, we must invite parties to say more, not less, because they have to speak, because they're the one doing the speaking, they're the one doing the talking, and the mediator is there listening, trying to understand and to summarize and paraphrase what the parties are saying in order for them to reach an agreeable solution. Because in open-ended questions, the questions start with what, how, when. When the questions ask it what, when, how, it open more communication room for parties. Another example, like the questions maybe you ask for parties to speak up in open-ended questions. So you could say, what would a fair outcome look like for you? How do you think we can move forward from here? This kind of question will make parties to speak up. How do you think we can move forward from here? Another question in the mediation, another approach is asking clarifying questions to make sure the party understand. And to make sure you understand the parties correctly also. When asking clarifying questions, you could say, when you said you felt disrespected, can you explain what happened? Because you're trying to clarify the issue. It's just for you to make sure, like, you understand that you're concerned about the parties. You're showing empathy in the process. And when you ask the right effective question in mediation, you try to be neutral. Try to use non-blaming languages. You avoid judgmental or making parties feel defensive. Instead of asking party, why did you do that? You can try, what led you to make that decision? You're focusing on interest when asking the right question in mediation, not position. Because asking the right question makes you to dig deeper to find out the real needs behind what they're saying. Another example, like, what was most important to you in this situation, that makes them open up to their interest. It invites reflection and empathy when you ask the right question. It helps party understand other point of view, each other points of view. Because asking the right questions can escalate or de-escalate conflict in the mediation. Because in asking effective question in mediation, you're trying to summarize the questions, to wrap up points, to transition into resolution. Because if you ask the right questions, parties open up and they tend to trust you because they felt that the mediator have understood them. I want to give example of some of the questions you can ask that helps parties to open up. I want to give some of the example because you have to avoid yes or no question unless you want a clear commitment. But to match your tone and emotion temperature of the conversation. Okay, let me give you some examples of questions of open-ended question. Let me give you some of the examples. When you ask parties in conflict, can you describe what happened? It gives room for more communication. They open up more. Or what will you like to see happen? What does this look like for you? What will it take for us to be able to move forward? What ideas do you have that will meet both our needs? What is more important to you in this situation? What is the biggest risk if you're not making progress? Tell me what you're concerned about. What is more important to you about this situation? Now, remember, when asking this kind of open-ended questions as a mediator, you must be kind and respectful. Let parties speak freely, but guide them gently. Because in all the questions you ask in the mediation process, open-ended questions are the most powerful tool, the right communication tool to get issues to be clarified. And it depends on the kind of mediation also, what type of mediation, if it's family, if it's tenancy dispute, depend on the dispute also. So effective questioning in mediation is very important, because with the right questions, the right questioning, you are able to discover the issues parties are facing in conflict. You are able to navigate the mediation process, because with open-ended questions, you get parties talking. So it's very important to begin with what, how, in asking your question. Avoid do you, or will you, or can you, as this can lead to yes or no answers. So it's very important while we ask questions in mediation to pay very close attention to what kind of questions we're asking. Remember, effective questioning is the open-ended questions. You have the close-ended question, you have the open-ended question, you have clarifying questioning, and a lot of other questioning approaches. But the most effective is the open-ended questions. Because if you use close-ended question, the answer can just be answered with a single word, yes, no. But when you use open-ended question, parties tend to speak more. It invites more communication. So it's very important as a mediator to know the kind of questions to ask in mediation, because you are the one listening and the parties are the one talking. They are the one talking. So if you don't listen to understand, how will you be able to facilitate the mediation process? And if you don't ask the right questions, you can escalate more conflict while trying to resolve the conflict before you. So that's why it's very important to be able to know how to ask the right question, because you're listening and asking questions, and mediation will help you to understand why these parties are in this kind of dispute. So it's very important to know how to ask the right questions in mediation, and to help parties reach an agreeable solution in the mediation process.